Our regional breakdown of the Super Centex. Here's a quick rundown of the teams that are ranked, and then we're going to get into, wait, where'd they go, Mallory? But first off, let's talk about those, the number 8th ranked Waco La Vega Pirates in 4A Division II, coming off a 7-5 season last year. Don Hyde's squad is looking to get back to being one of those powerhouse programs in the greater Waco area. Started off real strong last week with a 45-15 win over Kennedale. Striked early. Their offensive line is very veteran. They still have some key skill players, and not to mention a lot of returners in the secondary.
Yes, and I think that's a big portion as to why they're going to be successful this year. They have a lot of key players back on both offense and defense. And it's funny because when I was going through this, it seems like last year, it's kind of like, oh, Waco La Vega should be in the wait, where did they go section?
Yep.
But now they're like, bam, back in the rankings, back for action. You know, it's kind of cool.
Exactly. A hard-hitting, disciplined ball club that when they start rolling, you don't want to get in their way. So excited to see what the Pirates do. We take a massive skip down to our next ranked team, and that is 2A Division II in the aforementioned Marth Panthers. Coach Kevin Hoffman and his squad honestly went and got their teeth kicked in week 1. Yeah. They played Whitney, like she said, a 3A Division I team. So again, they're punching up 3 classifications there. They're 2A Division II. They played 3A Division I. Let's not freak out about the Mart Panthers. Kevin Hoffman is on his revenge tour after 2 years in a row of falling just short. There is nothing they want more than to get back to the state championship. And if anybody can do it, quarterback DeMontrell Medlock will be the guy to get them back there.
And it's funny, when I went back and watched the, please remind me, 2020 team that won state, right? There's like a million Medlocks. It's kind of like Columbus, where there's just a bunch of Shobles, and they're all super talented, and you know when there's one on the team, they're going to be successful. It's kind of the same way with the Medlocks and Mark. Like, that's probably just an ode to, hey, this is going to be a successful team because you got another family member coming in who's very athletic.
Absolutely. The Medlocks have been there for a long time. They're all related in Mark, literally. Like, they will tell you, oh yeah, Small town. That's my cousin. So don't freak out about the Mart Panthers. Like, let's push the brakes. Okay, they'll go through. They'll play a tough non-district, and then welcome to Murderers Row, baby. So they are back. Moving on into the bulk of our ranked teams, and we talked about some of them, but 1A Division I, the number 1 Gordon Longhorns, after an undefeated season, state title with one of the most prolific defenses that you've probably ever seen in 6-man, with only allowing 8.9 points per game through 13 games. They have so many incredible players coming back. 5 starters on both sides of the ball. Guys like Rye Reed, Striker Reed, they are all back and locked and loaded. If you're looking for a team to start betting that they might get back to a state championship, welcome to the Gordon Longhorns.
That was a fun team to watch last year at state. I mean, they were just so dominant on both sides of the ball. And like you said, a lot of returners, like, they're not going anywhere.
No, not at all. So Coach Mike Reed, excited for that. Also not related. Like, Striker is related, but Rye Reed is not related.
Yeah.
But he's related to the head basketball coach, who is also Coach Reed. Anyway, talk about relatives.
I remember getting to that.
They're related, but they're not.
And I was like, wait, but they all have the same last name, but they're not related. How does that work?
In a small town like Gordon.
And that's the thing. It would be different if it was like there was another Hartley in Arlington, Texas, right? But like in a very small town like Gordon, chances are they're going to be related if they have the same last name.
Absolutely. We move on down to a team that obviously DJ was very high on in the Abbott Panthers. Coach Kyle Crawford taking over for his dad, one of my favorite human beings, Coach Terry Crawford.
Good human.
No droppage there. We were very excited for their week 1 game against Oglesby, who we'll talk about in a minute. Again, obviously, as you can see, different classifications, but 2 teams that we were very high on. And we actually said this would be a huge test for Abbott to see and get a gauge on where they are. They graduated some of the kids. Where are we looking at? And it was actually, let me get back to my notes here because I wrote this down courtesy of Coach Abbott. I won't tell you which one, but one of the Coach Abbotts. Coach Abbott. He's basically Coach Abbott. They've been there for long enough. But Hogan Warren actually moved over to quarterback, and that was huge for them in their week 1. He's a kid that hasn't played since he was a freshman, so I think they were a little bit nervous about that move. But the best part about that is that allowed Micah Helge and Riley Sistala to be able to be a dynamic 1-2 punch in the backfield. So that is exactly how on the offensive side of the ball they were able to take down Oglesby in week 1. So very excited to watch the trio there grow together and see how Hogan morphs into a good quarterback there for the Panthers. Moving on to number 3, and that is the Jonesboro Eagles. How about that 1, 2, and 3 all coming out from the same region of the state?
Small school ball, man. That's the name of the game there.
Absolutely. Eddie Gallego's squad is back and really, really looking to kind of redo that season that they had last year. They did lose to the eventual state champion in Gordon, and so very excited to see what they do. They got a huge week 1 win, 60-13 over Abilene Christian,
which is a high school. Because
there's not the college.
Not the college.
A 1A 6-man team did not go play the Abilene Christian College, just to make that clear. I actually thought when you were doing I thought you typed that wrong on the score sheet the other day, and I was like, oh, there's got to be something that follows this, and alas, it did not.
Yeah. Both Abilene Christians lost.
Moving on to 1A Division 2, death, taxes, and never counting out Richland Springs. The Coyotes,
they're always in the run,
back up at number 2 in our Dave Campbell's official Associated Press rankings. In his second season at the helm as head coach, Sean Rogers led his Coyotes to the state semifinals before losing to the state runner-up in the Oglesby Tigers. Junior Billy Perry will be the bell cow of this squad, both in the passing game and the running game. A really dynamic player as just a junior there. Their defense looked fantastic. Pitching a shutout against Leaky Big Springs, 56-0. They are back to the Richland Springs that everybody knows and loves.
Yes, and then they're in a district that's totally manageable for them too. So I think I would say they're going to run district and then probably make a big run in the playoffs.
I would agree with that. Number 3, the state runner-up last year in the Oglesby Tigers, and one of my favorite coaches in the state, Coach Jeb Dixon, and what he did with that program last year. They have a ton of returning talent, including, I won't spoil it too much, but of course, Kyler Fawcett, their outstanding running back that now with the departure of Grayson Rigdon has every reason to be considered arguably for the best 6-man football player playing in this season. So very excited to see how that happens. Obviously, they fell to Abbott last week, but
you're
classification
punching up a
bigger
division. Yeah,
they have another very tough test against another larger school in May, but they're scheduling strong because they are looking to make another long playoff run and get back to AT&T Stadium. And then finally, it's Coach Zach White and his number 6 ranked Cherokee Indians. They bring back some top level running attack on the ground with Joel Valdez and Caden Houston. They are very, very young up front. It'll be interesting to see how that offensive line kind of develops and how well they're able to hold off the opposing defenses. But if they can open up holes for their 2 backs, then they should be up and running and hopefully contending for a deep run there in the playoffs. So those are the ranked teams in the Super Centex region.
Very 1A heavy, and I love that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when we were looking at the Super Centex, we always go, oh, it's the same teams we talk about all the time. And then you start looking at the rankings and you say, wait.
China Springs not there. Lorena's not there. Temple's not there.
Where'd they go? Well, let's take a look at some of the teams that we wanted to talk about and being like, okay, here are names that you are used to seeing that are just not there. We start off in 6A in the Temple Wildcats. This is a team that just 4 years ago, they were 10-2, had some of the most highly recruited athletes.
Torin York being one of them, who is now one of the biggest studs on the Texas A&M defense.
Yes, and so there was a ton of athletes. Well, last year they basically hit rock bottom. A 1-9 season is something that does not set well around that part of the state. Those are football crazy people. It's a one-horse town. They expect a lot out of them. I am here to tell you that the offense should take a pretty good step forward this year. Cade Stewart's back at their as their senior quarterback, that he has a year under his belt. A lot of these young parts of the offense last year are back and have a good one. My question is on the defensive side of the ball. Can they get there?
Well, here, actually, I'm going to flip you. Mm-hmm. I think my questions are more on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball, they've got playmakers everywhere. They've got 4 or 5-star prospects on the defensive side of the ball. My question is more on, can quarterback Stewart, who's the son of Coach Stewart, mm-hmm. can he take a step up? And I think it's more because the defense was really young last year. Mm-hmm. I completely understand that point. They were pretty much all sophomores, I'd say. Now they're taking that step up into the higher class. Now they're upperclassmen. Mm-hmm. They have that experience. I think my eyes are going to go more to the defensive side of the ball when it comes to Temple rather than the offensive side of the ball. But I do think that Stewart will take a step up, like you said. And I think they're gonna probably be sound on both sides of the ball.
I'm concerned about the defensive line. I need to see something out of that defensive line.
Fair.
That's the one that I'm a little concerned about. But again, like we said, young team last year, coming back, has more experience. Let's see before we start throwing too much dirt on Temple. But someone that just was a powerhouse for a long while and now has kind of fallen off. A newer program on the opposite side of the long-standing Temple program, a newer program down there in the Super Centex is Killeen Harker Heights. You'll remember that Coach Jerry Edwards was there, mm-hmm. led them to their first 12-win season. Then last year was the first outgoing for Mark Umble. He was once formerly he was the first head coach of Prosper Rock Hill when it opened. Took some time off there to go back to offensive coordinating and then stepped up. He was at Lone Star as an offensive coordinator under Jeff Rayburn prior to getting
mm-hmm.
that first head coaching mm-hmm. job. So snip, snap on the head coaching jobs. But trying to come in and kind of re-get that program up to where it needed to be. They've got 7 starters returning on offense, 5 on defense. The big question is going to be the quarterback. They had a good week 1 showing, a gritty week 1 showing, pulling it out 45-43 over Cedar Park. That was good to see a team like that who was able to pull out a gritty win in week 1. I think that says a lot about the fact that they had that many returning starters on the squad. So Killeen Harker Heights is one of these programs that I think can get back to where they were. I'm not saying they're going to win state championship. They've never been there before. But I think that we might be seeing them get back into that form that we saw at the latter half of the tenure of Coach Jerry Edwards when he was there early on.
I think so too. And Mark Umble obviously is a program builder, mm-hmm. right? He didn't necessarily find what you would define as success when it came to building Prosper Rock Hill. Mm-hmm. But obviously coming off of a 7-4 season, which is a pretty good season. I mean, you're making it to the playoffs at that point, right? I think they are in really, really good hands with a guy that can get them to the point that they are used to being where they were with Coach Edwards. I
Absolutely.
really, really do. And I really like Mark Humble as a guy. I think he's a great offensive mind, and I think he's exactly what this team needs after another good offensive mind left.
100%. Moving on down now to 4A Division II, it's a team we've talked about a little bit, the China Spring Cougars. After going back-to-back state champions under 2 separate head coaches in Brian Bell and then Tyler Beatty, they raise the standards down there. And people
100%
expect that now. It's hard to come in your first year, win a state championship, and then fall a little short next year. So obviously after Major Bowden left, then Cash McCollum came in. There's the biggest question. They've got a lot of returning starters on the offensive line that I think are going to allow Matthew Battles to hopefully step up in the way that they need him to. He's got some weapons on the outside, but all eyes are going to be on the quarterback, as it always is in China Spring, this time for a little bit of a different reason than what we've seen the past couple of years.
Well, and I think it's super interesting to take a look back at their history the last couple of years, mm-hmm. because in 2021 they win the 4A Division II state title mm-hmm. against Gilmer.
Yep.
Then they punch up a division in
mm-hmm.
4A Division I, and then they go and do it again against Bernie.
In a first-year head coach.
They're put into a district with Stephenville, Waxahachie Life, Lorena, a tough district, and they go and do the same thing the year after. Now they're going down a classification again in 4A Division II. What do they look like you said, post Cash McCollum, post a quarterback that they have been able to rely really heavily on for the past 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. The other team in 4A Division 1, almost along the same storyline, oddly enough, the Lorena Leopards went out and won the state championship in 2021 under longtime head coach Ray Biles. After 30 years there at the helm, was able to grab his first state championship and then rode off into the sun as a champion forever. We love Coach Biles. Then enters Coach Kevin Johnson, who, if you remember, was principal turned head coach. He was the offensive line coach during that state championship run, but oddly enough was playing double duty, left his principal duties to go lead the Lorena Leopards squad. Not necessarily the best showing from them last year, but they do return 8 different returning starters on the defense, and that is going to be the name of the game again. This defense looked fairly well. It'll be the strong suit that they are absolutely going to rely on. The offense looked very green against Austin Regents.
Yeah,
very green.
And that's a game that you probably should have won at the end of the day. For a powerhouse like Lorena and a coach that has experience at that school, that's probably a game that you should have pulled out and win. But again, they're very green. They're a very young team. They're only going to get better, and I think they're headed absolutely in the right direction.
Yep. Moving on to our final 2 here in 3 Division 1. This is a little bit of an older taste, if you will, the Cameron Yo Yeomen. So Cameron Yo back in the day was a team that you could always expect to be up there. It has been a minute since Cameron Yo has been that dominant team. They've had a ton of coaching changes, and they've actually just had one this past year. So after a bad 3-7 season last year, head coach Aaron Bobineau now is at the helm. Much like the Lorena defense, they have 3 really good returning starters on the offensive line that they're going to use heavily. They lost their quarterback Braylon Drake to graduation, so being able to get back in sync, find a new signal caller, that's going to be a really big one. They lost 52-29 in week 1, and I think that for me was more disappointing in the defense than anything. I think I expected more out of that unit, and I am slightly worried that if the offense can't pick it up and the defense isn't going to be as stout early on as I would have hoped that they would have been, that makes me a little bit nervous for the Yeomen.
Yeah, I think so too. But bringing in a defensive-minded guy in Aaron, how do you say his last name?
Bobineau.
Bobineau. Okay, because he, like you said, he was the defensive coordinator at DeSoto, and this is a team that has struggled really, really bad on the defensive side of the ball in the past recent history. What better to bring in a guy that is very, very defensive-minded and can get this team where they need to go?
Absolutely. And finally, to round out the where are they? Where'd they go? It is 2A Division 1. Let's take you down to the San Saba Armadillos. Go back to 2018. They have an incredible season under, oddly enough, now Cuero head coach Jared Feacock. Then comes in our guy, Coach Aguirre. Another fantastic season in 2019. So the Armadillos, we're cooking. Okay. Last year we're at 3-7. How did the fall happen? How did we get there from here? I'll tell you what, here is something that San Saba fans should feel really, really good about, and it is district realignment. The UIL actually did them some favors this time.
Yes.
So they went from District 5 in Region 2 to now Region 4 in District 14.
Which is a very, very manageable region.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
But here, it's a manageable region compared to Regions 2 and 3.
I don't think so. I think it's a very manageable district. The region, fair. Not so much. So last year, in their district alone, they had teams like Coleman, and then they had the state runner-up in Toller. So that's in their district alone. The region was still difficult. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you look at where they're at now, their district is much easier. Harper, Holland, Johnson City, Thorndale, Mason. If you ask me right now, I think the district championship, if San Saba steps up in the way that we think they can, will come down between Mason and San Saba. Possibly Johnson City, possibly Thorndale. I would say that pretty solid those should be your top 4 teams in that district. So district-wise, you can have that. You can get people going in a small town like that. You can get back up to saying, hey, we're the district champs. Let's go in. Let's be the crazy man in the fight and try to start something. you get into how it would end up looking there between just the right side of the bracket, and you've got Refugio in their region, you've got Ganado in their region. So I would argue that their region is no easier than it was last time, maybe even a little bit tougher in this current standpoint of where we were at. But their district, which can completely change how you head into the postseason mentally, how you're ready to go, all of that could make it an easier battle than what it would have been last year when it was 3-7 and we don't even get into the playoffs.
Right, and I think I was thinking more of Region 3 because I know Timpson's in Region 3,
correct,
which is now obviously a little bit easier now that Terry Bussey is gone. They're not, seen as much as they were last year, but I think I was thinking more of Region 3. Region 3 is very, I would feel manageable, but yeah, Region 4 with Refugio and,
yeah, when you're going Refugio, possible Ganado, up in like all of that side of, like the whole right side of the bracket is just crazy. So ideally you stay on the left. Didn't happen. Okay, we'll go to the right.
Yeah.
But district-wise, a lot easier, and I think a big step up could come for the Armadillos there that we haven't seen in a hot minute. So there you go. Wait, where'd they go? A couple of teams that we feel like can easily get back into the groove of things. A couple teams that we think still might be a little bit down this year. We'll see. But just a very interesting look through the rankings this year that we haven't gone through in the past 2 years when we've been doing this show.
Yeah, usually, Super Centex is packed top to bottom with ranked teams and really, really talented players, which we'll talk about here in a second, but it just seems like the spotlight more is on the 180, the smaller classifications. So that's kind of exciting.